Hi everyone. Today I'm going to discuss percentiles of the group data. So the formula is familiar to you since the formula was derived from the median of the group data as well as median of the group quartiles. Now, PK there is the unknown percentile while the where k is from 1 to 99 since we define percentiles as dividing an array into 100 equal parts. So we will be dealing with calculating for the first percentile up to the 99 percentile. So k would stand from 1 to 99. And capital N here is the total frequency or the total observation. And then this expression is the formula whenever we want to calculate for the percentile class, which is also necessary in calculating for the percentiles of the group data. Same with the median, they also have the median class as well as with quartiles, they also have quartile class. Now, with less than CF here, take note that less than CF is the cumulative frequency of the class before the percentile class. With F sub P sub K, so this is the frequency of the percentile class, and this should be small letter I, which will serve as the class size. So let's work on calculating for some percentile values of a group data. Like for this one, so we're going to work on the 15th, the 35th, and the 67th percentiles. So same with median and quartiles, we have to work on completing this table first and then work on the percentile class, then eventually calculate for whatever is asked in the problem. So lesson cumulative frequency is obtained by adding cumulatively the frequency. So we'll start from the top. So 2 plus 8 is 10, plus 10 is 20, and then plus 8 is 28, plus 2 is 30. So again, n is 30 here. So we will be working now on the percentile classes. So let's begin with P sub 15. So for P sub 15 class, K equals 15. So we will multiply 15 by 30 all over 100. Since working on percentile classes requires us to make use of this formula. Okay, so for P sub 35, we have K equals 35 times N all over 100. And then lastly, P sub 67, K equals 67 times 30 all over 100. So we have 15 times 30 and then divide the result by 100. So we have 4.5 for P sub 15. And then for P sub 35, we have 10.5. And we have for P sub 67, it's 20.1. Now we're going to locate now P sub 15, P sub 35, and P sub 67 classes. So for P sub 15, we're going to locate 4.5 since there is none here. We're going to consider greater than 4.5. So we have four possible values here, but we're going to consider the closest value to 4.5. So therefore, we will now consider this as the P sub 15 class. Now with P sub 35, since there is not 10.5 on this column, we're going to consider the third class since 20 is the closest value among these three possible values which are greater than 10.5. And lastly, for 20.1, we're going to consider the fourth class. So this will be P sub 35 class, and this will be P sub 67 class. Since 28 is greater than 28, 20.1 is 28 is closer to 20.1 than 30. So we're going to consider the fourth class as the P sub 67 class. And recalling the formula for the class size is equal to the upper boundary less the lower boundary plus 1, rather upper limit. So if we're going to consider the first class here again, so the class size is equal to 28 less 21 plus 1. So we have 8 as the class size. Now we are ready to solve for P sub 15, P sub 35, and P sub 67 using the information that we have obtained. So for P sub 15, we have the lower boundary of the P sub 15 class is 28.5 since the lower limit is 29. So we will just less 0.5 and then plus. Then we have this for the numerator of the first factor. So we have this value 4.5. And then we will less this by the less than CF. So by the way, again, P sub K is equal to lower boundary plus K times N all over 100 less than cumulative frequency all over the frequency of the first of the percentile class times I. So we are now in this value. So less than CF for P sub 15 class is 10. Prior to this is 2. Or before this, less than cumulative is 2. So minus 2. All over the frequency of the P sub 15 class, which is 8. And then we will multiply this by the class size, which is 8 also. So P sub 15 is now equal to, so less 2 all over 8. And then we will multiply the first factor by the second factor, 8. So we have 31 here. So P sub 15 is 31 for this data. And then we'll proceed to P sub 35. Now the lower boundary for P sub 35 will be 37 less 0.5, and that's 36.5 plus, so this is equal to 10.5. And then the lesson cumulative frequency of P sub 35 class is 20. Prior to this is 10. So this is less 10. All over the frequency of the P sub 35 class, which is 10. And then divided by the class size. So we have 36.5 again plus the the product of the first factor times the second factor, which is the class size, equal to 8. So we have 36.9 for P sub 35. And then lastly, for P sub 67, so the lower boundary is the lower limit less 0.5. So we have 44.5 here. Plus, so this one is equal to 20.1. And then the lesson cumulative frequency for P sub 67 class is 28. So prior to this is 20. And then we have the frequency of the P sub 67 class 8 and then times 8 here. So we have 44.5 again plus the product of the first factor and the second factor. We have for a while. So we have 20.1 less 20 all over 8 and then times 8 again. So we have 44.6 here, which is the value of P sub 67. Okay, next. So the first thing that we're going to do is to complete the table. And we are actually asked to solve for the 20th, 45th, and 87th percentile. So this is adding cumulatively again. So 4 plus 10 plus 11 plus 2 and then plus 3. So again, our n here is 30. So we will be dealing this time with calculating for the for the percentile classes. So we have P sub 35. So we have here, okay. So we are currently dealing with the percentile classes, and we're going to work on P sub 20 class. Okay. So we have now P sub 20. So K is 20. So we'll multiply this by 30 divided by 100. And then P sub 45. So we have K equals 45 times 30 divided by 100. And then P sub 87. K is 87 times 30 divided by 100. So 20 times 30, then divide the result by 100. So we have 6 here for P sub 20 class. And then 45 times 30, divide the result by 100 again. So we have 13.5 here. And then 87 times 30, divide by 100, we have 26.1. And then we will locate these values along the lessons cumulative frequency. So since 6 is not located along this corner, we're going to consider greater than values or greater than 6 values. And we have 4 values here. So we're going to consider the closest. So therefore, this is the P sub 20 class. Now 13.5, um, we're going to consider the same class with P sub 20 with respect to P sub 45 class. So, meaning P sub 20 and P sub 45 share the same percentile classes. And then for 26.1, we're going to consider the fourth class since 27 is greater than 26.1 and this is closer to 26.1 than 30. So this will be your P sub 87. And so recalling P sub k equals lower boundary plus quantity k times f all over 100 minus less than cf all over frequency of the percentile class times I. And again, in this data, I is again upper limit minus lower limit plus 1. So if we're going to consider the first class, so we have 1,500 less 1,001 plus 1. So I is 500. Now, we can solve for P sub 20. And P sub 20 is equal to the lower boundary, which is 1,501 less zero point 0.5. So this is 1,500.5 plus this is equal to 6 minus. So the lesson cumulative frequency is 14 of this class. Before this is 4. And then all over the frequency of the percentile class, which is 10 times 500. So this is like adding 1,500.5 to the product of the two factors. So we have 1,600.5. So I think this is in peso and this is 1,650. Okay, now since P sub 20 and P sub 45 share the same class, we will be substituting the same given in the formula as we solve for P sub 45 except for this value. Okay, so 1,500.5 plus, instead of writing 6, of course, we're going to write 13.5. Then we'll copy everything. So we have 13.5 less 4 and then 10. We have 1,975 pesos and 50 centavos. And for P sub 87, we have the lower boundary is 2,500.5 plus this is equal to 26.1. So the lesson cumulative frequency is 27. Prior to this is 25. So this is minus 25. And then frequency of the percentile class 2 and then multiplied by the class size 500. So this gives us 26.1 less 25 all over 2. So we have 2,775.50 there. So let's proceed to the last example. Solve for the 51st, 63rd, and 94th percentile. So again, we're going to complete the table. So we'll add the frequency cumulatively. So we have 3 plus 4 plus 16 plus 4 and then plus 3. And then we're going to consider the percentile classes. So let's begin with P sub 51. So for P sub 51, K is 51 multiplied by the class size, which is 30 times 100. And then P sub 63, K equals 63. And then we multiply it again by the class size 30 divided by 100. And lastly, for P sub 94, K is 94 multiplied by N, which is 30, divided by 100. And then this will be the percentile class values. So we have 15.3 and then we have 18.9 and then we have 28.2. Okay, so we will locate these values along this less than cumulative frequency. If there's none, then we're going to consider greater value than the percentile class values. So for a piece of 51, we're going to consider the third class since 23 is the closest value to 15.3 among the three possible choices here. And we'll consider this as P sub 51 class. And then for P sub 63, 18.9. Again, we will consider the same class with P sub 51 and this will also be our P sub 63. Since 23 is greater than 18.9 and 23 is closest to 18.9 among these three possible options. And then for 28.2, we're going to consider the last class. Since 30 is the only value greater than 28.2, so this will be P sub 94 percentile class. So recalling again P sub k equals LB plus quantity Kn all over 100 less than CF all over the frequency of the percentile class times the class size. And the class size is equal to the upper limit less the lower limit. If we're going to consider the first class here, so this is 10 less 1 plus 1. So I is 10. Okay. Now, solving for P sub 51. So the lower boundary is 21 less 0.5. So this is 20.5 plus this is equal to 15.3. And then the lesson cumulative frequency is 23. Prior to this is 7. And then all over the frequency of the percentile class, which is here 16. And then we multiply this by the class size, which is 10. So we have 20.5 plus the product of the two. So it's 15.3 less 7 all over 16. And then we multiply this by 10. So we got 25.69 rounded off to 2 decimal places. Now for P sub 63, so since they share the same class, percentile class, so we'll copy the given except for this. And instead of writing this, we're going to consider 18.9. So we have 20.5 plus quantity 18.9 less 7 all over 16 times 10. So we have 18.9 minus 7 all over 16. So it's 27.94 for P sub 63. And then lastly, for P sub 94, so the lower boundary is 41 less zero point 0.5. So this is 40.5 plus, so this is equal to 28.2 less. So the lesson cumulative frequency is 30. Prior to this is 27. So this is minus 27 all over the frequency of the P sub 94 class is 3. Okay, divided by 10, or rather multiplied by 10. So we have 28.2 less 27 all over 3 and then times 10 here. So we have 44.5. So meaning, working on the percentiles of the group data is identifying first the percentile class. Before we identify the percentile class, we need to add cumulatively the frequency because that will determine as to where is the percentile class. And then substitute the given in the formula, then we'll come up with the percentile value. So that's it for now.